You're listening to episode 108, update episode, Emily Stroia. Welcome to the Grass Gets Greener podcast, the show for survivors by survivors. I'm your host, Melissa Wilson, a bullying survivor and anti-bullying advocate. And each week you'll hear from a survivor who has overcome a traumatic experience to go on to not only survive, but thrive, so that you can too, starting now. Hello, and welcome to this latest episode. So I have another update episode for you today. I did the first of this type of episode not too long ago, and you guys seemed to like it, and I enjoyed doing it, so we're doing another one today. And for those of you who may be new to the podcast and have no idea what I'm referring to, I'm going to periodically be bringing back past guests of the show to update us on what they've been up to since they were last on. And while it's not entirely necessary to listen to the first episode with my guest before listening to the update episode, it probably would make more sense to do that. So today I'm going to be rejoined by Emily Stroia from episode 86. You can find that episode at thegrassgetsgreener.com/Emily S, or by searching it up on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you're listening. But to give you a quick synopsis of what we talked about last time, so Emily joined me last time to share her story of how she has been able to overcome multiple forms of child abuse to transform her life and not let her past become all that she is now. Emily was born into an abusive household where she was mentally, emotionally, physically, and sexually abused as she was growing up. As a result of this abuse, Emily had difficulty trusting others and feeling safe with men. She also felt unlovable and unworthy of love. It was therapy, establishing boundaries, working on her belief systems, developing her intuition and spirituality, focusing on self-care, and surrounding herself by those who support her that have helped Emily in her healing journey. And so I wanted to bring Emily back on because she's had a lot going on since we last talked, and she's doing even better today, and she has some new strategies that she's been using that she's going to share with us. She also has a new book coming out that she is doing crowdfunding for, so I wanted her to come on and talk about that to see how we can help support her in that endeavor. In addition to that, we're going to talk about intuition and why it's more difficult for some people to get in touch with their intuition than others, the role that intuition continues to play in Emily's healing, what Emily's future plans are, and the relationship that Emily has with her parents today. So I hope you're excited to catch up with Emily. Emily and I have remained in touch since the first time we talked, and I'm excited to have her back on the show. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get into this one, and I'll go bring Emily on. Emily, welcome back to the podcast, and thank you for joining me here today to continue sharing your journey with us.
Thank you, Melissa. It's such an honor to be back. It really is, and such a great joy to actually connect with you, not just here on the podcast, but even in person in the times we have met.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you back on, and yeah, you were first on August 8th, 2016, and and you and I met for the first time in person later that month when you came out to California for a little bit, and now you've since moved out here, and we most recently saw each other at a workshop you did in April, and so it's been great to get to connect in person as well, and I know you have a lot of exciting things going on also, so I'm definitely glad to have you back on to share all that with us.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, like, just to hear that I came on almost a year ago.
Yeah.
And how much it just changed, how much I've created in such a short period of time. Wow.
Yeah.
So it's phenomenal.
Yeah. And, before we kind of dive into that and talk about what's been new for you, I'd like to have you kind of let us know about what it is that you do today. I know last time you told us that you were a spiritual teacher and an intuitive, and I know those things are still true. But is there anything else to add to that now?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm definitely still my spiritual teacher self. And I'm an intuitive and a medium, as you know, and I have written a couple of books on spiritual development, specifically like psychic and mediumship development. And I'm also working on my next book, which is going to be a lot more of a spiritual memoir, in the kind of self-help department. And I'm super excited about that. So that will be really exciting to share with the world.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, that's one of the reasons that I wanted to have you back on and have you back on at this time, because, you had reached out to me and told me that you were writing this book and that you had created this crowdfunding campaign for it. And, you're asking if I would help support. And of course, I'm happy to do that. And I thought, hey, why not have you back on the show as well to tell us a little bit about it? And, maybe we have some listeners who would love to help support you in that as well. So, tell us a little bit about the book that you're writing.
So the book that I'm writing is titled at the moment, Fight for Your Life. And that title came to me about 5 months ago, after a training that I did, and it really sat with me on how my entire life I've felt like I've literally fought for my own sense of place in the world, and really fought for myself to be here and to be someone who shares a vision and stands for that vision. And so the book is a spiritual memoir, and where I tell the story of my life through really short kind of poetic excerpts or stories, if you will, on different memories, and also just my transition from the beginning of growing up in a very toxic home, of which I shared on the last podcast we did, to how I discovered my gifts and how I've transformed my life and recreated and redesigned it and reinvented myself as many times as possible, so that I can have a vision and so that I can live my vision. So that's basically the synopsis of it. It's just a place, a tool for me to share my story and also inspire others to share theirs and reconnect to their own spiritual truth and being here in the world.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you're using a platform called Publishizer, is that correct?
Yeah, a friend of mine actually recommended it to me. It's funny, how the universe works. I set the intention a few weeks ago that I was looking for different ways to get my story out there, and I've definitely sourced different book coaches who've come into my awareness through word of mouth, some just randomly through classes and workshops. And then a friend of mine sent me this link to Publishizer, which is a new crowdfunding platform for authors, who also, on how, depending on how many pre-orders you get, that shows visibility to publishers who are on this crowdfunding platform looking for authors. So basically it kind of pairs you up with publishers who might be interested in your book, and just kind of an awesome opportunity to create and shift, to really create your story and put it out there in the world and have that connection to a publisher much more easily than how it is kind of traditionally.
Yeah, that's great. I know that I pre-ordered my copy just the other day, and I know that around the time that this episode will go live, that campaign's probably going for another week, just about. So I'll definitely have the link to that in the show notes for anyone listening who wants to check that out and possibly help Emily reach her goals with that. So Emily, tell us what else have you been up to since you were last on?
Yeah, well, I moved, I believe, I moved from New York to LA with a suitcase and my dog. We live here out by Venice Beach now, which is fantastic, and I've been really just focused a lot on my well-being over the last 6 months. I had been kind of gypsy living a little bit and couch surfing with friends, and for a while. I gave up my apartment in New York, so I was really just trying to figure out my vision. And sometimes it takes a little bit of really letting go of a lot to come back to yourself. And that's what it kind of took for me, was to really kind of let go of every path that I thought was for me, every sort of concept, and just come back to myself. So I felt the call to move out to LA about a year ago, and it was really a large jump and leap for me to do that. So I decided to just slowly ease into it. And then I've synchronistically found a really awesome place to live. And that was very magical in its own way of showing up in my life. And so I've been working on that, just kind of getting settled into being on the West Coast now. And I've been teaching. I've been starting to do live workshops out here in LA. And that's been awesome, just to transition from being online to now the offline world. And I've been also doing online programs with my students, so teaching for my school. I have the Intuitive Soul Academy, and that's the online school for spiritual development. So I have students from all over the world that come on, and we do, like, I have a 16-week program that I teach people how to develop their mediumship and intuitive abilities. And so that's really been powerful to have a new group of students working with them, and there's always something awesome in watching their transformation from very beginning stages of working with their spiritual ability to seeing, wow, they can really do this, to like owning it and trusting it. So that's been awesome as well. So a lot of things. And then also just self-development. I've been working a lot on myself and healing and transformation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know you have lots going on, and I'm excited for you, and to see where you're just going to continue to go with everything. And yeah, so like I said earlier when I first brought you on, I went to your workshop that you did in April on learning to develop your intuition and stuff, and that was a really cool experience. I know I've been trying to get in better touch with my intuition lately, and so I found that really helpful. And it's interesting because I went into it knowing that I wanted to learn how to be better at it. And what I found was you had us doing some exercises and stuff, and I found that some of it came a little more easily to me, a little more naturally than I expected. So that was interesting. There was one exercise, the first one that we did, where we were paired up with somebody, and they had to just send us this image that they were thinking. And I remember it just it came to me, and I ended up getting this exact image that my partner was sending to me, and that was a really interesting experience.
Yeah, isn't that fascinating how intuitive we actually are, and how often we overanalyze it and psych ourselves out of what we're getting to be actually really true. Yeah, absolutely. That's so funny. I do the same thing, even now in my work. I mean, constantly. I think it's just part of the process of life, is that we are constantly in relationship to our intuition, but then we so often just kind of ignore it, or we ignore that nudge, or we think that it's not possible, or just some other reason for it to not be real,
Yeah, I think we're probably all more in touch with it than we realize.
Exactly.
Yeah. What do you think makes it more difficult for some people to get in touch with it than others?
I think some of it, I feel is a little bit of nature, right? I feel some of it's a little bit of just social mental conditioning, value system, beliefs, going with the rational, and then that's, I've met people, I've had friends who have shared that with me, that, growing up, they didn't have really strong imaginations, or they weren't very sensitive as a child, or, it's kind of a very structured home environment where, there wasn't a lot of freedom to play or to be, and I think that also does play a role in our connection to the inner voice or the intuitive self. And so part of it definitely would be just own your background. And I think the other part of it is just sometimes fear, I feel like it's a big thing of fear of not understanding it. I know that's what I've heard from a lot of people, and that's what I experienced, was fear of not knowing how to control it or not knowing what it actually is. Or sometimes I've heard, different students say that they think they're going crazy, or it's just, how is that possible? So there's fear of like the unknown in life, and there's also fear of what is this other part of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I know last time you were on, you talked about how developing your intuition and spirituality had been important to your healing. Is that playing an even bigger role for you now?
Oh, absolutely. I feel like my spiritual development has been my saving grace at the end of the day. My intuition, 100%. And that's definitely something that I'm going to kind of explore in my book, is how my intuition has become this source of healing for me. Because every time that I felt confused or uncertain or just doubted myself, I went into my inner voice, and I asked myself, or I asked the universe for guidance, or sent that thought out in the world that I needed a miracle or I needed support. And then, synchronistically, certain people would show up in my life that I like to call as earth angels, or, friends, or just a book that I might have found, or something I read somewhere or heard somewhere, just showed up in such a way that it was this little sign. And then also opportunities that I navigated just by listening within and not questioning it, but just kind of going with it.
That's awesome. Are there any new techniques that you've been using in your healing journey since we last talked?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whoa, that's like such a big question. Yeah.
Or maybe, are there some you want to share that you think might be helpful for those listening?
Yeah. Actually, it's great that you say that. So something that I've been doing that's been really powerful for me is I have a dry erase board, and as I develop and in my journey of transformation here in in the world, I have like a list of self-love commandments, if you will, or declarations or intentions. I like the word commandments because it kind of, like, for me, it reinforces a sense of discipline. And on that, I have these 10 ways of being, or 10, some of them are tasks that really support my healing and my transformation. And it's almost as necessary as like drinking water every day. And so that's definitely something that I've done as like a tool for myself. And also in the mornings before I really like wake up and like start my day, I actually like listen to my thoughts initially in the morning. Like, what are some of the first thoughts I'm having as my eyes are starting to wake up, and noticing what thoughts are there in the morning and if they're serving my greater vision or not.
Mm-hmm.
So if they are thoughts, sometimes I've noticed I'll have thoughts like, oh, I don't really want to, do today, or like, like there's this groan a little bit. And then I'm listening to myself. I'm like, okay, well, that's not a thought that's really healthy or serving me right now. And I just opened my eyes. I'm just having like fully conscious of my first breath of being awake. So what am I creating? What do I want to shift into? What is my vision for my life today?
Yeah. I've been, sorry to interrupt, but
no, go ahead.
this kind of ties into that. I've been doing something very similar myself lately. Like
Uh-huh.
when I first wake up in the morning, I try to just like get grounded right away, and
Yeah.
I'll just kind of tune into my body and how I'm feeling, and without judging it, but just tuning into how I'm feeling and just becoming present into the moment. And I feel like that's been helpful. And also just focusing on my breathing, and really, yeah, I think it's about getting off to a good start to the day. Like you said, you don't want to start your day with thoughts that are not serving you. And so it's like, catching yourself and reframing that, so that you're having these more positive thoughts that are going to serve you for the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, it's crazy how we can really almost sabotage ourselves in that way, without even realizing it, right? We're just
Oh my
like,
God,
we're
yeah.
having all these negative thoughts that are not good for us. So yeah, I just wanted to share that, because that's something I've been doing, and I've been finding it very helpful just to kind of start off the day that way. So I think that's great that's been working for you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 100%. It's been a really powerful tool for me to and I have some awesome intuitive feelings in the morning, I've noticed, in between the full waking state and sleep state, where I'm just kind of there. And so what I like to do sometimes is like have my phone next to me, or like a journal, and write down, like right after I have those downloads or those feelings, just write down what those words or those thoughts were, or those sometimes they're serving for my writing, like literally, just right before our call right now, I got this intuitive download for something with writing, and it just, sometimes those little things will show up right in between my full waking state and the sleep state. So that's really cool as well.
Mm, awesome. Yeah, was there anything else that you wanted to mention?
Um, yeah, there's something else that I've been practicing, and that's forgiving myself and being so conscious enough to forgive others in the process. Like, um, I've noticed in the past that if I had a certain amount of things I wanted to create in a day and I didn't meet my own expectation, I would go into self beat up, or just get really hard on myself.
It's so easy
Uh,
to go there.
yeah. Or like if I had an expectation towards a friend or someone I was in relationship with, anyone, family, friend, partner, if they didn't fulfill that expectation, I would go into that in my head about them, or just have these extreme ways of thinking. And then I started realizing, like, we're all human, we're all part of life. Like, this is part of the experience of life, is that I get to practice kindness towards myself and also other people, and not wait for that person to take responsibility, but rather create the space for connection, and even own my own ways of being if I'm not open to a conversation that could create healing,
Mm-hmm.
So it's a practice of forgiving myself daily, even if it's a little thing that I'm noticing I want to go into, my old stories about, and also like shedding light on humanity and another person, you know. Just like perfect example of this. It's just so simple. Like this morning, I was going to Whole Foods and picking up a couple of items, and I wasn't exactly like paying attention, so I was standing in line, but not really in the line, and I was kind of in a bit of a morning daze, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So the gentleman that was standing there had invited me to go in front of him, even though the line was actually on the other side. So I was in the wrong line. And the gentleman behind him said, "You should go. Just go, man. Like, she's not in line." And his tone of voice was quite like a little angry and aggressive, or that was my interpretation of it, at least. So I took it personally for a second,
Mm-hmm.
and I really like wanted to say something. But then I like sat with the feeling of the irritation behind his experience of me, and it was true. I wasn't in line, and you know, however he said it was his way of saying it, but the facts were I wasn't in line and that this gentleman could go ahead of me. So I was able to really like shift from this space of like irritation and anger to acceptance and also acknowledging the experience for what it was, and not taking something personally, because literally like right after I left Whole Foods, that same gentleman that I was feeling irritation from was actually homeless. And hanging out on the street outside of Whole Foods.
Mm-hmm.
So it really like it's a constant lesson, like practicing forgiveness and acceptance and learning how to not take things personally.
Yeah, it does take practice to get to that point, where you are able to say, okay, I'm not going to take this personally. I'm gonna let it go. I'm gonna change the way I'm perceiving it. That's something that it takes time to get to that place.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last thing that I've been doing is trying to acknowledge myself on a daily basis, like, because I've struggled so much with not feeling enough, that this tool has really helped me so much, is really just acknowledging myself for what I have created. Sometimes it's simply acknowledging that I'm alive, and that in itself is a miracle. So that's on one of my list of tools that I would love to share with people, is really acknowledge yourself for anything and everything you've created in your day, and just for your journey in your world, in your life right now. Is that there's so much that we constantly are working towards, or feel like we might not be there yet, but you are exactly where you are supposed to be, and it's important to acknowledge your own beauty and your gifts. And so I try to at least every day practice self-acknowledgement. So just acknowledging all the work I've created and the person I've become and the woman that I am, and that I am powerful and I am a courageous person, and that I do believe fully in taking stand for other people's voices in the world. And I think that that's really wonderful, because it takes away from looking for validation from the world, but seeing it in myself by doing it for me.
That's great. I love that. Yeah, I mean, sometimes, we kind of lose sight of what we have right now, and we're constantly focused on where we want to get to. But if we can find ways to just be content with, where we're at right now, it makes it so much easier, so much more bearable, I think, and like you said, I mean, we're right where we need to be, where we're supposed to be. And I know that, like, in practicing gratitude has been helpful for me in that regard, and to just appreciate where I'm at right now and what I have right now, regardless of the things that I, wish I had, or, just where I want to be in my life, so that's been helpful for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Gratitude is such a powerful practice, in just kind of shifting from you to focusing out, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like such a great balance to be able to shift from I'm grateful to myself, and I'm also grateful to others and to my dog, and it's really wonderful to just be able to shift into focusing out and seeing how there's a world outside of you and in you.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, thanks for, sharing with us kind of what's been new for you and the things that the new things that you've been using to help you get to where you are today. Do you have any, aside from your book that you have coming out, any other things that you're currently working on or looking forward to in the future?
Mm. Well, I have my Intuitive Soul Academy online that I am grown over the last year, a few months actually. And so there's the membership community, which I'm really enjoying, and we're growing very well. And the membership community basically is an online community where people have access to all of the content I've created over the last couple of years, minus my mediumship program. And there's like meditations in there, and then there's also like live workshops we do online every month. And that's something that I'm taking focus on, as well as just building that and building connection for people, because it is really great when people get on. They love the live video calls, and they love having tools and resources at their convenience to grow and develop their own spiritual gifts. So that's that. And then I'm also going to be doing over the summer like a legacy lightworker program, and where people who are in this background of being a healer or an intuitive or a spiritual teacher or what have you, they will work together over the summer to build their own platform. So a lot of my students ask me for that support in taking their kind of work to the next level.
Cool. Yeah, and I'll have your Intuitive Soul Academy linked up on the show notes page as well, if anyone wants to check that out. But yeah, very exciting. Like I said, I'm looking forward to seeing what you create going forward. And so, Emily, I know that you're doing pretty well today. Are there any things that, you're still kind of struggling with from your past, things you're still working on, things you want to get better with?
I wouldn't say I'm struggling. I don't feel like I'm struggling with anything. I feel like I've definitely transformed a lot of the stories about my parents into seeing them for who they are and who they've become. And so what I'm working on now is learning how to really practice unconditional love to myself and to them. And it's really fascinating, like, to build a new relationship with them, like where there's a healthiness to it, and also a place where I get to own my voice in a way that I didn't own it before. As I feel like in the past, my voice came from almost this sense of entitlement and self-righteousness, in which I felt like they owed me. And now in our conversations, it's such a different communication, because now it's more about how can I support them, and seeing that they did as best as they could with their ability to. So I've been working on allowing space in our communication, and also opening a place of love and understanding who they are for the parents they were growing up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. So, Emily, I want to ask you the final question that I have for you today, and this is, the same final question that I asked last time, but, perhaps your answer is different now as you have continued to grow since then. And that is, given what you know now, if you could go back to when you were going through your tough times and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
If I could go back to those times when things were really challenging and difficult, I would probably say to myself, one, that there's an angel always around somewhere. Somehow there will be someone there to pick you up and guide you when in your darkest time, and that you're never alone, that you're always loved.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. So, Emily, as we kind of wrap things up here, as being a repeat guest on the show, I want to know how we can best support you in what you're doing so that, you can continue to grow and to pursue your goals. I know that you have your book coming out, which we talked about earlier, and I'll definitely have that crowdfunding campaign linked up in the show notes for anyone who wants to go and check that out. And maybe be willing to pre-order a copy for you. Are there any other ways that we can help to support you right now, or would that be kind of the best way for you right now?
Yeah, I think that's definitely one of the best ways, 100%. And feel free to check out the Intuitive Soul Academy. That's the intuitivesoulacademy.com. And that's where a lot of my work is, a lot of my main courses and the membership community. But yeah, absolutely, 100%. My book is part of the vision for what I'm creating in the world.
Great. Yeah. And how can people connect with you or, just find out about everything you have going on today?
Yeah, please go to my website, www.emilystroia.com, and you can get on the email list and you'll get updates on what I'm creating and all of that good juicy stuff in terms of workshops and free stuff. I give away lots of things all the time. So yeah.
Yeah, sounds good. I'll have that linked up as well. So yeah, Emily, just thank you for coming back on. I really appreciate it, and always great to connect with you, whether it's on the show or in person. And I really love what you're up to. And like I said, I think it's just really, it's great and it's inspiring. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you're going to create in the future. So thank you again for taking the time to share what you've been up to with everyone.
Oh, thank you, Melissa. It's an honor to be on here.
All right. Well, I hope you have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Thanks for listening to the show today. This has been the Grass Gets Greener podcast, episode 108. Go to thegrassgetsgreener.com/Emily S and the number 2, since this is Emily's second time on the show. So again, that's thegrassgetsgreener.com/Emily S and the number 2 to find the links mentioned during this episode or to leave a comment. And if you want to help support Emily, be sure to head over to the crowdfunding campaign for her book, where you can pre-order a copy or share it with someone you know who you think might be interested in her book. That campaign runs until Saturday, June 10th. So if you're listening to this before then be sure to check it out and let's help support her in any way we can. And then come back in 2 weeks for the next episode, and I can actually tell you who that's going to be with. That is going to be with Annie Kim, who is going to talk about how she's been able to overcome past trauma through the help of art and how she's been able to create a new life for herself today. And other than that, don't forget to head over to iTunes or Stitcher to leave the show a rating and review if you haven't done so yet, so that we can reach as many survivors as possible. And, as always, have hope.